Hey, what's happening gamers? It's Luke from GameZone here with my impressions for 3D Dot Heroes for the PS3, an obvious Zelda clone. But even though this is a good game, it is by no means an original game. Although Sony does succeed in pleasing retro gaming nuts like myself and others with this title. Our story opens in the Kingdom of Datonia, where a dark plague covers the land and the evil King Onyx has stolen the 6 magic orb. However, a young man rises up against the Dark King, and with his legendary sword and the aid of the magic orbs, he seals Onyx, within the orbs. Time passes and the hero's tale becomes that of a myth passed on to generation after generation. Today, strange forces begin to stir in the peaceful kingdom, and the Dark Bishop steals the orbs in hopes of ruling the world. Much like every other 8-bit inspired epic adventure game, our hero awakens from a dream and is summoned by the king. The king charges you with finding the hero's sword deep in the woods. Immediately, players are going to see a strong resemblance to the Legend of Zelda's 2D games. Especially A Link to the Past, as Atlus has borrowed a lot of ideas from the plot, even down to the weapons that we'll use in this journey. Gamers familiar with how the NES Zelda controlled will be right at home here. So I don't really need to explain how one button will attack, another uses your secondary item, or how players have an inventory menu either. Gameplay is the traditional Legend of Zelda, minus a Link that is. You move your character from screen to screen, battle numerous baddies, collect items, solve puzzles, and yes, even rescue a princess. The game offers 2 different vantage points, a zoomed-in side camera angle, and of course the traditional top-down view from past Zelda games. Although this only happens inside buildings or caves. As you defeat enemies, you earn power-ups, like maxing out your sword powers it up even when you have low health, or you can perform a critical strike, but this is very rare. I did notice how some enemies have crowns over their head, and this implies that they're tougher than the regular monsters you've slain. The graphics are this game's only real claim as an original title, but even that is a stretch for me. You see, Nintendo has not made an old-school NES-style adventure game in 3D, but Atlus did, and it looks great. Everything is so detailed, giving the game this kind of Lego pop-up book look. Still, the environments looked impressive, and I grew to like the visual style a lot. Although personally, the water effects hurt my eyes tremendously. Besides the game's graphics, the only original factor of this game comes down to the use of your sword. Instead of getting your uber sword in the middle or at the end of the game, players collect it before the first dungeon. The sword behaves like Link's trusty blade, but with some differences. For one, the sword will grow to enormous size if the hero's health bar is full. As the bar decreases, so does the size and strength of the sword. Blacksmiths can upgrade not just the strength of the sword, but also its length, girth, and magic power. So, what don't I like about this game? Actually, I have a list, but I want to keep it brief. Because believe it or not, I actually like this Zelda clone. But even so, these are the things that annoyed me the most. First, as great as the graphics are, all the dungeons in this game look exactly alike. The only difference is they changed the layout and put in different bad guys. Speaking of the bad guys, did you know that just about every single enemy is a cheap knockoff of a Zelda baddie? Well, they are! You have orange and blue pig creatures, centaurs, the mages, jelly monsters, mummies, ghosts, knights, bosses. But wait! It gets better. All the traps, colored blocks, obstacles, and locations of the temples are almost identical to those found in Zelda also. It's funny, Nintendo thought of suing Wisdom Tree for spiritual warfare in the 90s, but this game gets away with copying the entire formula to the T, and Big N says nothing? I'm sorry, I just find that funny. Farming money is a pain in the neck in this game. Much later in the game, it demands you have thousands of coins in order to progress. So, not being able to earn lots of money comes back to haunt you very quickly. The last 3 dungeons are way too long, and to the point where it became not only confusing, but really boring to boot. I'm serious, I checked my clips to beat the Flame Dungeon, it took almost 2 hours with all the backtracking you had to do in that dungeon. Speaking of backtracking, it isn't fun in this game at all. Actually, it felt like hard work most of the time. Now that I'm thinking about it, the game forces you to run around flipping switches to unlock different paths, right? but what you're actually doing is just going around in a big circle. When I was doing this, it was really riding my last nerve. Magic is a big joke in this game. Frankly, you're only going to use 3 powers a lot in this game, namely Reflect, Earth, and Ice magic. Everything else isn't that useful to your adventure, and it's just dead weight. Out of all the things not to mirror about a Zelda game is its difficulty. See, Legend of Zelda had just the right amount of challenge and fun factor to make it a perfect game. This game went a little bit too extreme difficulty-wise. Entering the Desert Temple is the first time I died in the entire game. This is due to 2 foes, the Magi and the Jelly Monsters, but mainly the Jelly Monsters. See, in 3D Dot Heroes, these things can drain most of your health, and the yellow-colored ones will drain your health down to 1 apple. So, the fact that only 2 bottles are available to you at this point, and you can only have 2 potions, death is imminent. That's just terrific. But to add insult to injury, most of the monsters' AI in this game is dumber than bricks. Example, the feared Black Knight is a wuss. I mean, just look at this guy, and people complain he's dangerous? Give me a break. By this point, and all the other stuff that I went through this game, I was starting to loathe it. But I kept going, and I beat the game, and I mastered it, and I've got some awesome tips to share with you guys for my guide series coming very soon. Now what you guys have all been waiting for, on to the stuff that I actually liked about this game. Before the game begins, players can actually create their own pixelated hero, or if you're missing the creation gene, then 3D Dot Heroes offers a variety of hero templates to choose from as well. Atlus also lets us download fan site characters to add to the game, and that's awesome. This video has actually showed some of my favorite video game and cartoon heroes, but yes, Link was definitely the star of this show. I liked how the game starts out 2D and then the king decrees from this point on will be 3D. That was really funny, plus the game still managed to retain that nostalgia pixelated sprite look even though it was 3D. The humor in this game is great too, and it has lots of cracks about the old school gaming, and even hundreds of nods to the classics like Gauntlet, Final Fantasy, and Chrono Trigger, just to name drop. I'm kind of on the fence about the music in this game. At first I thought it was okay, and I kind of like the 8-bit tunes, but sometimes the game does more SNES or even N64 style music. Don't get me wrong, the music sounds great, but it just jumps around too much for my taste. Gameplay isn't that shabby either. Easy learning curve, and the first dungeon is perfect for new players. Items are pretty epic in this game as well, but the most useful one is the warp wings, which made your journey a lot easier to revisit locations as opposed to walking the whole way. Collecting is also another fun aspect of this game, and in total the game has 24 swords for you to find, each with its own special features too. I'm very pleased with the sheer amount of subquests this game had, and the freedom it offers the players in completing them. Still no homage to Zelda's Complete unless you have minigames, and Datonia has you covered with 3. All in all, I have to say this game isn't bad in the beginning, but what ruined my opinion of this game was the later dungeons. Minigames, side quests, booking monsters, exploring, and collecting all fun. Tackling dungeons and fighting the bosses, not so much. See gamers, the one thing Zelda has managed to do over the years and why Nintendo reigns as the king of these type of action games, is how the game is laid out. Of course, Zelda games are hard, but not every dungeon will push your button. 3D Dot Heroes, for me, went too far with being nostalgia and piled on the difficulty more so than even the hardest 8-bit games from years of yore. Trust me, that's not something Atlus should be bragging about, because it decreases the fun factor significantly. It also made this game very predictable. Every dungeon you beat, the next one will be harder and harder. It's like climbing a mountain only knowing that it's going to get steeper the further you go up. So not like a Zelda parody at all, sadly. If the game had actually copied not just the look of the game, but also the feel, this could have been a great game. Instead, it comes out as an okay game. Well, I'm spent, gamers. Thanks for taking the time to watch my impressions of 3D Dot Heroes for the PS3. Starting in June, GameZone will be publishing a few video guides for the bosses, items, and other goodies in this game. So with that being said, keep it glued here on our YouTube channel for new videos by me and other contributors. Also hit up our new and improved GameZone.com for incredible stuff you won't find anywhere else. We love hearing the gamers' feedback, so please feel free to leave us comments or email us. This has been Luke K-Wing. My catchphrase as always is God bless and happy gaming. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and until we meet again, gamers.